Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for this webinar today, and thank you for hanging around for a couple of minutes there. We were just making sure everyone was online and that the presentation actually worked and a few things like that for today. The webinar today is hosted by NRM Regions Australia through their Industry Partnerships project, and for those of you who have been on a few of these before, we're back to a quick webinar. So we'll have these quick introductions and welcomes, the presentation, and then as much Q&A as we can fit in before the time is up, which is in 45 minutes time. We will be recording it, and I do edit that up and put it online and send it out to everyone who's registered for the webinar. I'll begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we are all meeting from today and paying my respects to their elders past, present and future. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are here today, and in my case, I acknowledge the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains. Online today, we have a fair few people, actually. We've got a great turnout so far, 30 odd people online. And the facilitators are myself and Trish Cave, who is there to rescue me if the technology fails. I have had a couple of internet issues lately. And our presenter is Dr. Greg Leach. He's the General Manager of Natural Capital and Industry Engagement at AgForce. Greg will present on the topic and be available for questions afterwards. Please put your questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring that, and we'll get through as many as possible in the time frame. But we are pretty strict on the time frame in this version of things. So today, Dr. Greg Leach will discuss the drivers of and the increasing need for farm level accreditation of sustainability. Greg will introduce AgCarE, which has been developed by AgForce in Queensland, and AgCarE is used as a tool for evaluation of farms' natural capital condition. This includes an initial audit of carbon and biodiversity assets. The tools to do this are in an online platform. So without further ado, I'll get Greg to share his presentation and give him the floor.
Thank you. So I understand I've got about 25 minutes or so to talk through this. So yeah, this has been a large involved process within AgCarE, or within AgForce for it was 5-6 years now. So just wanted to relay some of that and hopefully provide some context and understanding of a methodology that's, I guess, taken some time to develop, and I guess is now available for use by landowners and associated stakeholders and so forth. So yeah, just trying to move through that. So as the title says, it's about AgCarE, helping landowners measure and capitalise on improving natural capital condition, I guess, which is the core tenement of what this AgCarE program is about. But before we jump into that, I'll just go to talk about natural capital per se, and I guess some of the drivers as to why AgForce as an organisation has looked at this. So AgForce, in brief, is a membership organisation, agricultural state farming organisation, and with about 6,600 members, so representing more than half of the ag area in Queensland, and I guess quite strongly represented through various forms of membership, and yeah, providing quite a I guess we would think quite a strong voice on a range of different issues pertaining to agriculture. And I guess AgForce as an organisation, yeah, been in existence for over 20 years now, but was largely formed on the back of some worrying signs for landowners on the basis of legislative change in Queensland related to vegetation management and other things. But I guess vegetation management was a core aspect. And so as a body of concerned members for 20 years, there's been quite an adversarial interaction piece with governments at federal and state levels and increasingly local levels about the I guess, the management of the landscape and about the regulatory approach that's been taken to that. And so in 2018, there's a number of us in the organisation were concerned about that, and we're pushing the AgForce board to consider another way of looking at the landscape rather than just a big fight about legislation, to be looking at, okay, what are landowners, what are members really concerned about here? And the concept of natural capital was put before the AgForce board, and they just took it on straight away and said, yeah, okay, we need to have a new chapter in AgForce looking at valuing landscapes, not just about having an adversarial fighting piece about farmers' rights and all that sort of thing, but a different chapter looking, okay, if we celebrating as all Australians and as all international concerned citizens, okay, the value of what Australia is and what our natural agricultural landscapes are. This natural capital piece has a fairly strong message that producers, landowners, and other stakeholders really quite concerned about collectively, and about the natural capital, about its condition. And so the board adopted in 2018, said, okay, we really want to support a conversation where we can talk about the value of what our landscapes provide, both to agriculture, to society at large, and also to the environment. And so they set on a pathway as a partner organisation with the National Farmers Federation, and said, okay, let's try and work with this natural capital concept. And they commissioned the then Vegetation Management Committee in AgForce, which is representative members across the organisation, to operationalise this, to take it forward. So if we look at the definition of natural capital, which is supported by the NFF, being defined as the world stocks of natural assets, all that we depend on. And I guess from an agricultural position, let's think about the interdependent relationship between the natural assets and the economic activities or the agricultural endeavours that are taking place on those landscapes, and with full recognition that much of Australia's history is on the back of agriculture and so forth, and there's a lot of land, and we all know that it's zoned as rural, it's zoned as agricultural, and to ignore that, as some would want to do, is difficult. And ag industry sort of said, well, let's embrace this relationship, and said, if we can look at the interdependent relationship between our natural assets and the economic activity that goes on there, maybe we can look at a measure of condition, or a measure of how that relationship is going. And so the AgCarE concept was born from that, in terms of trying to measure the condition of that interdependent relationship of a healthy agricultural system within a healthy natural landscape. And so the AgForce organisation, this slide is just simply here to say that AgForce, the organisation, has taken this on really strongly and said, we see a vision where that landowners are recognised for, and in some ways financially rewarded for, for looking after the natural landscape. And the purpose of an AgCarE program, which developed through these conversations, was that we have a vehicle that's able to measure the condition of this interdependent relationship. And so that's simply, this slide is simply illustrating that AgForce as an organisation has taken this on very seriously. So this next slide is just looking at some of the benefits. So I guess because this conversation has been going on for such a long time, it has involved a lot of work by a lot of people. For instance, the Vegetation Management Committee that put this AgCarE program together had at a minimum 140 minuted meetings of a group of highly energised volunteers, really, who are concerned enough about the health of the landscape and the health of this relationship between agriculture and the natural assets, that they wanted to develop something to help bring this forward, to help landowners tell their story, but also to help measure it. And so as this conversation was emerging, there was a number of benefits that were starting to, pop out of the conversation. So One was about social license. So I'll just at the top of this slide. So the committee was all about developing a framework and a method to help build the resilience of landscape. So that was a key driver. That was what they wanted to do. They weren't wanting to make money. They weren't wanting to do other particular political things or whatever. They were wanting to look at building the resilience of their landscapes as agricultural producers. And so as the conversation went through 2019, 2020, they were thinking, well, they can really come together and build a methodology that helps build a resilience of landscapes, but also helps look at building farm output and financial position as part of that as well. And so that just wanting to emphasize that the money wasn't the key driver from the outset at all. And so I guess these things from points 1 to 7 have been emerging through time. So first, the social license for sustainable landscape management. It's a broad term. I guess it's been coming through quite strongly from a number of different organisations, such as Queensland Government, Queensland Treasury, and others that are coming to us sort of saying, well, we think that this types of methodology provides landowners with the social license for doing what they do. So there's numerous stakeholders that are providing evidence of this. So the second one, supporting better production through building natural capital condition. Because so that's quite a generic that we know that the whole I guess emphasis of large bodies of work like AgCarE, the regenerative agricultural movement, and others are founded upon the key tenet that healthy landscapes produce better, and so that's what this AgCarE methodology is all about. The third benefit, I guess, which is interesting because the committee started working with this probably in absence of consideration of the carbon market, because they were quite incensed that the carbon market actually didn't cater to their needs. And so they were keen on developing a method that was almost exclusive to the existing carbon market. And so, so when they started doing some AgCarE assessments, it was unsurprising for me, but some of the early assessors to say, well, I've got a carbon project out of this, or I've got an environmental offsets project out of this. And so out of doing this assessment. And so, I guess that does loom large as being a large driver and benefit from doing AgCarE assessment. The fourth area, which was completely unsuspecting for us, was the improved risk profiles for rural financing and insurance organisations and stakeholders. So banks started approaching us saying, we like what you're doing. We think it improves the risk profiles for our lenders. We've got a conversation this week with Suncorp, and other organisations that we had through time that are really serious about using a consistent methodology to help improve their lending relationships with their clients. We're fortunate to say that some of the early participants in AgCarE have received interest rate reductions from their banks. So the fifth area, due diligence for property valuation, property resale. There's a number of conversations going on there, but valuers and real estate agents have been approaching us for some time, sort of saying that, we know that this helps, and some are looking for that service in their property sale. The sixth area, building landowner and market access. Yes, I mean, that's one example. I could talk quite a while about. It was late last year, went to Germany at the behest of a large commodity purchaser there who said, we like what AgCarE is. We think it meets our European SBTI flag requirements. Come and tell us about it. We think we're prepared to buy bulk commodity from Queenslanders who have a good AgCarE assessment. So, so market access is another part of this. And the seventh one that's emerging at the moment is the Task Force for Nature-related Financial Disclosures and the Task Force for Carbon-related Financial Disclosures, as looming large as a key vehicle for enabling landowners to have a verifiable position on their property to help with their sustainable financing. But, so there's several other points to this slide as well. But Kate, do you want me to pause and ask if there's any questions on that?
You can ask.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for Greg at this stage? No?
Okay, so the I guess the key challenge before the committee and why they met so many times was how to craft a measurement process that has several key defining features, and I guess fairly pragmatically, the committee were concerned with the fact that it needs to be relatively cheap. It needs to be current and embracing the whole system of the property. It needs to be repeatable and verifiable. It needs to be supported by science, and it needs to have a validation system and an auditing function within it. And I guess it needs to have enough clarity and enough clout so that major stakeholders such as government and others are prepared to say this is a credible assessment. And so, yeah, so the original framework that after many meetings we came up to in 2019 involved 10 metrics, and one being the human factor. So what are the propensities of the landowner, the land manager, in terms of how they're wanting to look at building and supporting natural capital. 2, the resilience plan. So what is the property plan that the landowner has that they're keen to articulate how they're going to achieve these things? 3, and the rest of these points from 3 to 10 are, I guess, biometric assessment. So 3, remnant vegetation. What's the condition of that vegetation that's been regulated by federal, state, or local law? It's sure it's been regulated. It might be remnant, but where's it at? What's its condition? The 4th being non-remnant vegetation on grazing areas. So for those areas that have been improved for grazing activities, what's its condition? 5th area, soil condition, just generically. What are the soils on the property and where are they at? 6th area, a large, big open door, but biodiversity, at least at a property level, what are the biodiversity values that are recognised by the state and by many different stakeholders as to be important on that property? The 7th area being water cycle, water use efficiency. So how's water working on the property? 8th area, another big one, being stock total grazing pressure. So of the managed and unmanaged mouths that are on the property, what are they? What's the impact of that? 9th metric being high value agriculture, meaning farming as in tillage, growing crops and so forth. What's the cycling that's going on in those high value systems? And the 10th metric being the energy footprint. So electricity, diesel, gas, petrol, so on and so forth, subtracting the renewable solar power that might be happening on the property. What is the net position of that property business in undertaking its activities? And so this original framework, we've tested this on 37 properties throughout Queensland, and in the initial testing phase 2.5 years ago. And yeah, it came up trumps pretty much, to say that while we were just stumbling along trying to get some metrics together and trying to just simply add things up on a spreadsheet as to scoring and that sort of thing, which is quite rudimentary. We gave the assessment of over 37 properties at a score of 30 for these 10 metrics. The average was 16.5 out of 30 for all those that we tested. And surprisingly, all the landowners assessed were positive about what their scores were. There's obviously quite a few that are under the bar, but at least it gives them a position and I guess some reasons as to why a natural capital assessment might deem that their property was lower in score. I guess key point to mention here was that we wouldn't have done any of this testing had we not developed a legal terms agreement with the landowners. So being involved in AgCarE, landowners are provided with the option of signing a legal terms agreement to spells out the requirements in terms of confidentiality and management of data, and so forth. And so, yeah, so it's only when these landowners were confident that their data was confidential and protected that they were also open about talking about their score, which is, I guess, quite important. So some of the key learnings from that initial assessment was that not everyone wants to concentrate on all those 10 metrics, and the producers were keen on more of a modular approach, looking at things as modules, sort of a plug and play assessment, if you want. So to plug in and do what you want to do. And so the current modules that we reframed from those 10 into 4 modules were: 1, an ecological values module; 2, a carbon balance that's conducted on the property; 3, commodity specific modules; and 4, a grab bag of sustainability concerns that are from society and governments and those sorts of things. So they're the current modules that we've tested through 2 further rounds of testing. And I guess another key finding from our first round of assessment was that participants wanted to be confident that the questions that they were answering and how they were being assessed was consistent with international and national standards on environment and a range of things. And so, yeah, so we did a lot of work to ensure that our carbon balance tool is aligned with national international requirements. The ecological values module ticks off on regulatory frameworks in Australia. Our commodity modules, such as beef, grains or cane, align with our nationally recognised benchmarks and plans, and that our sustainability module links in with, this is an exhaustive list here, but links in with some of those key indicated templates that are used internationally, such as Sustainable Ag Initiative Global or other ESG approaches. So we just made sure with a lot of work that our assessment process aligned with numerous standards, and we've just completing a body of work. We've had a consultant do a much deeper dive than we initially did into standards alignment, and yeah, happy to say that we've got a much clearer picture of where there's a few gaps in what AgCarE is, but where our strong points are. So yeah, moving along quite strongly there. So these frames are just simply to illustrate the level of detail to which an AgCarE assessment goes. So the vertical coloured columns are the modules, so an ecological values module, in this case a carbon balance module, and a beef property, so a beef commodity module, and our sustainability module. So each of the horizontal lines indicates an area of inquiry, whether it be either several questions or maps or data that's collected to answer a series of questions in each of those horizontal lines. So this one's for beef, this next one's for cane. So yes, I'm not wanting to get into too much of the detail there, but just to illustrate that there's probably about 120 or so questions once this is all stretched out. About 120 questions that are I guess sought from the landowner to answer a full assessment with each of these 4 modules. So to talk about data collection, 3 main sources of data, the largest of which is unsurprisingly our publicly available data. So in Queensland, we sort of pride ourselves, and I know this is a national conversation today, but we pride ourselves in having pretty good data here in Queensland. And so particularly with our veg and our mapping, which is pretty cool. And so we're drawing from a lot of those advantages in our AgCarE assessment. The second source of data is the landowner records, production records. So inputs, outputs on the property. The third area is this 120 questions that has progressed through a survey questionnaire, which has taken a lot of time to develop and continues to be developed. And these frames are simply showing that another key learning from our rounds of assessment of testing were that producers are really keen that they are considered to be at the helm at the driver's seat in terms of what they want to do, where they want to go, and which types of modules they want to, what might want to do. And so this frame here is simply illustrating that we've endeavoured to do that, to make it fully optional with the landowner as to what type or what level of activity they're wanting to do. And so our recommendation certainly is that landowners conduct a verified assessment of AgCarE, and that takes into account all the modules we've looked at, and that they do the whole questionnaire for complete assessment, and then that they link with other options beyond that. So that's what we recommend. But it was some are choosing to start at a voluntary level and then electing to move to a verified level after that. So yeah, we're just wanting to put, and of course on the right hand side there we've got a custom level, so the landowners can pick and choose whatever they want to do. And this herendogram here is just simply showing that with verification, which is what we recommend, there's numerous values, and this needs to be updated. This herendogram, numerous value propositions or improvements in property value that are being achieved through an AgCarE assessment. We've got some going to environmental offsets projects, a number going to carbon projects, or some electing to look at the international Verra or gold standard carbon projects, working with climate active, and so on and so forth. I just want to talk briefly, and this is what I might pause after this, but so two more slides. So the reference panel, so another key learning from our initial testing phase was that the landowners were really keen that they had done an activity that seemed to them to be really quite scientifically based, but they wanted to be confident that they had recognition from the scientific fraternity in Australia to say this was a reasonable thing. And so 18 months ago, we began the process of getting together a reference panel of eminent scientists or whatever in Australia. And yeah, it was actually not too difficult to do. So we met with the chief scientist of Queensland, Hugh Possingham, and a couple of academics from UQ involved in environmental offsets and soils and things. And from those initial meetings, there was a snowball where we very quickly had a group of about 12 to 15 high-level experts / academics in Australia who were prepared to sit down in a detailed way and look at it from a scientific perspective about verifying the assessment of the methodology and ensuring its scientific validity, and also talking about a governance structure for ongoing scientific verification of an AgCarE assessment. And so, yeah, we've had several meetings, and there's strong agreement on a 4-step verification process of AgCarE that we're currently underway testing. And the bottom point here was that, and this is, I guess, some of the initial response from the people who were doing AgCarE was that some of these landowners weren't really keen on signing up to a carbon project or an environmental offsets project or a biodiversity credits project, but they were just keen on knowing what options or what values there are from these things. And so the reference panel is currently under consideration as to what are some of these potential values that do exist. I mean, for instance, AgForce owns 2 large properties in Queensland. One is just west of Rockhampton. We did an AgCarE assessment on that property, and there's an underlying value that was sitting there that the board didn't really consider. Probably $1.7 million of carbon project that was obviously unrealised before. Does the board want to immediately go to a carbon project? No. Are they wanting to consider that potential value on their balance sheet? Yes. And so these questions are coming up quite strongly now as to how are some of these potential values that exist in terms of natural capital projects or values, how are they recognised in a formal way. So international links. yeah, I guess we're just trying to illustrate that we've got a whole lot of work going on here. And I think I just might pause there, Kate, and just come back to say what our links, yeah, quite strong with lots of different organisations. This conversation today is, I guess, the first larger collective conversation we've had with NRMs, and so yeah, I guess open question, open invitation to say, look, okay, we've spent a lot of time developing an AgCarE methodology and an AgCarE assessment process, and that's I guess that has been at the behest of the people involved in the committee, that we wanted to go through a phase of proof of concept and get to a point where we're able to release it to the market before we had a large collective look at how we go about delivering this. But yeah, so I guess we're now in that phase where it's on the market, it's been developed, and yeah, I guess, and this is ag industry sort of being a little bit, wouldn't say protective, that's the wrong word, but a little bit cautious to say that ag industry was really keen to support the benefits of natural capital from an agricultural production point of view. And so they're comfortable that they've sort of done that now with AgCarE, at least to a point. And now it's sort of saying, well, let's open this up to have broader conversations with key stakeholders in Australia that are really interested in this space. And so that's my invitation today. So can we talk openly and confidently about how we can work together to, I guess, support, from my second slide, this interdependent relationship between ag systems and natural systems. And I guess we're putting the AgCarE platform on the table to say, here's an offering to say we're keen to do it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Maybe just stop sharing your screen, and that'll be great. And following on from your final point about coordination and that sort of thing, we've got a question here from Dan from Fitzroy Basin, wondering if there is an extension provider version or login available so that extension staff can better understand the process and promote it to landholders possibly.
Great question, Dan. So yeah, that has been considered. I guess some time ago. Yeah, about the key need for an extension function to really make this work, and so the NRM community has been certainly looked at as being a key. Stop using the word key, but a major, I guess, resource in this space that is of key interest in providing some of that support. And so, yeah, we're all ears and completely open to that. Is there an online extension resource at the moment? No, there's not. Is there an intentions to do that? Most certainly there is. At this point in time, AgForce, and I manage the regional managers in our engagement team, and so we have our small extension facility in AgForce to work with this, but I guess we're all ears to sort of say, yeah, we think there's a much broader remit here and much bigger extension function that's required. And I mean, I can wax lyrical here for a while, I suppose, but I think that the whole history of land care and the whole history of NRM regions has been largely supportive of a strong extension function. And I guess ag industry sees this AgCarE as an add-on to. I mean, it's called AgCarE for a reason, because it's in the same land care type family, and so there's naturally a big call for extension to really help it and make it work. Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Yeah. So I'll go with Edward's question, then I'll ask you one. Has there been collaboration with some of the other existing initiatives? So I saw you listed Accounting for Nature and Farming for the Future in your final slide. How much collaboration has there been in developing methodologies or checking that methodologies match?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Yeah, there has been lots of conversations, yeah, particularly early with Accounting for Nature, and yeah, so collaboration in where AgCarE is at now. There hasn't been a strong. There's been a memorandum of understanding and a full recognition of what AgCarE has been attempting to do, yeah, so when I'm saying that, yeah, we're now looking for those broader collaborations and integrations, that also is also with Accounting for Nature. And yeah, so farming for the future. Yeah, again, we've had lots of conversation with Sue Ogilvie and people within Farming for the Future, and fully aware that Farming for the Future is taking their focus, broadening their focus to Northern Australia now, and so we're in full preparation for working with Farming for the Future in helping. And I guess the way that AgCarE is viewing Farming for the Future is it's a really fantastic support for garnering some of the science that's going to underpin the benefits of natural capital. So yeah, so but I guess in answer to your question, we haven't developed open collaborations just yet because we're wanting to go through our full proof of concept phase, and it's taken some time. It's not simple. Our full proof of concept phase, so that we were, I guess, reasonably happy that, or ag industry was happy that in Queensland there's a reasonable tool that can be used to collaborate and work with others on. Yeah.
So I guess my question is around, okay, so if you're looking for extension and some partnership around that sort of thing, how do who did NRMs talk to? Is that you directly, Greg, or are there regional staff that they need to talk to?
Yeah, so probably both, but myself initially. So, I mean, yeah, we're a reasonably small unit. Yeah, so the AgForce is an organisation with a staff of 42 and membership of 6,600. Some of those members are volunteers on committees, and they do a lot of work in that space, and they're very vocal and key contact points within this. And so I think a broader answer to the question, Kate, is that, probably industry through myself or Mike Gearin, our CEO, he's really championing AgCarE and has been involved with myself in many meetings with various corporates and others. So Mike Gearin, Greg Leach, our regional managers across Queensland, I guess our key ports of call. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. And I've got one last question, which is going to put us slightly over time, I think. But have the costs or level for participants been developed so landholders have costs, or the level of costs for different levels, I'm guessing, is what the question is.
Yes.
Being developed for landholders to consider entering into this program. Is there a prospectus available for promotion? And I'm pretty sure the costs are online.
Yeah, the costs are online,
yes.
And it's a difficult question. Yeah, and I guess we've thrashed around with this for a long time. So the costs are cost recovery. And when we say cost recovery, we've invested a lot of money into getting to where we are now. And so we're in deficit. So we've got to recover some costs that have been already hard baked into what AgCarE is. And so when I say cost recovery, it's been structured and costed at that. An entry level is sort of around $6,000, that type of thing. And yeah, most properties that we're recommending do the program is sort of around $10,000, $12,000, that type of thing. And I guess our early feedback from people who have signed up to the program is that, yeah, they see the value in it. And I guess the larger piece that we're really quite happy with is that several, not all, but several of the early participants in AgCarE have received several-fold their benefits back from either projects or, interestingly, interest rate reductions from banks, and there's lots of money involved in that. And so, yeah, the benefits are really quite strong. Yeah, thank you.
Terrific. I am going to call a halt because I promised everyone would finish on time. There is another question there. I'm also just posting a feedback survey in the chat, a link to it. So for everyone who has questions or thinks of something afterwards, if you put them into that feedback survey, I'll make sure they get to Greg and we'll try and find some answers. Greg, thank you very much for your time. I know there's a lot of interest around the country from NRMs around this farm level accreditation and the way that that differentiates from sustainability frameworks that look towards the trade side of things and those sorts of things. So what's actually happening on the ground. So, and I think that was shown by the participation today. So we had over 40 people there at one stage, which is terrific. So thank you, Greg, for your time. Thank you, everyone who participated. We'll have another webinar in a month's time on May the 15th, and we've got Caitlin Lupke from MLA talking about their environmental credentials program. So similar